Happy Monday. Here you are at the beginning of week 4 of the Wild Fit Challenge. We're rounding out the first month of the challenge and we've laid some really powerful foundations. Well done. So, how was the buffer zone? What was it like? I know it was different. What I'm curious about is, what did you learn? I know some of you jumped in right away. You said, that's it, cold turkey. I'm cutting out all those grains. I'm cutting out all those junk sugars. I already took out refined sugar. Let's just add that to the list. And you jumped in right away. Some of you, you waited till today. That's good. And some of you kind of were in the middle. The question is, what did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about your dialogue? How did you feel when you did or didn't eat those things? How did you talk to yourself about it? It's really important that we continue to do that. Really important. For example, if you did have some of those junk sugars over the weekend, remember to pay attention, even now, continuing to pay attention to that food timeline. How do you feel before you eat something? How do you feel once you've made the decision you are going to eat it? How do you feel with the first bite, the second, third, fourth, and fifth bite? How do you feel when you're done? And most importantly, how do you feel afterward? You're going to begin to feel differently at this point because so far you've already removed one of the most toxic things that humans eat, and that is all this refined sugar. And as this week progresses, you're removing something else. Not necessarily toxic in the same way, but something that is stressing out your pancreas on a regular basis. What we're going to do now is give our pancreas a vacation from all these junk sugars. Look, the pancreas is still working. We're feeding it lots of fruit at this stage. Remember that you can continue to eat as much fruit as you want. You're at least increasing it by 2 to 3 times, or you could be eating as much as you want right up until about noon or whenever you start eating other foods. So your pancreas is still doing work, but it's doing different work. It's doing work much more aligned with what it evolved to do. You see, your pancreas didn't really evolve to handle grains. It didn't really evolve to handle refined sugar, corn syrup, and all that other stuff. It evolved to handle fruit sugars. It evolved to handle honey from time to time. And so we're giving your pancreas kind of a vacation. That's where we're headed this week. So this week, as you take these foods away, I want you to remember some important stuff about the sugar monster. You see, the sugar monster last week was like, all right, you can take away the refined sugar. I still have my bread and my pasta and my potatoes and my rice, and I got the fruit going on over here. You can have a week like that. And now the sugar monster's going, excuse me, but that's a lot of things you're taking away. And I want to remind you that every single time it tries to rebel, every single time that it tries to, get you to eat something, every time that happens, I want you to recognize that each time you say no, it gets smaller. If you feed it, it gets bigger. When you deny it, it gets smaller. And the voice will become quieter. It'll become less convincing. It'll start to sound whiny. And by the way, have you ever noticed sometimes the teenagers in our lives, they can be a little irritating? I finally figured out why teenagers can be a little irritating, because some of the naggy questions and the whining, oh, come on, mom, dad, whatever. I realize one of the reasons we find that irritating is because, and don't tell our teenagers this, but it's irritating because we have that same voice inside our own heads already. It's the same voice. The sugar monster's a teenager. The sugar monster's in there going, oh, come on, we've been so good already. What do you mean bread? Bread's been around forever. I mean, look, the church has been giving bread to people for thousands of years. And Jesus, he split the bread. Whatever, right? The devil, the little sugar monster might come up with all kinds of different arguments at this point. But really, it's just a little whiny teenager that's trying to talk you into doing something, and you don't need to give in to the peer pressure. You're going to deny them, and you're going to allow yourself to develop some strength in this area. And frankly, whatever they're whining about isn't even true, because they still have a little bit of honey here and there. They still have some fruits. So the sugar monster should be perfectly happy this week, if a little uncomfortable. So the important things for you to pay attention to this week are, notice when that sugar monster jumps in and tries to talk you into stuff, what techniques, what manipulations are they using? Really pay attention to that. And I want you to think about some of the things that we're giving up. I know that this might seem a little challenging, like you're going to miss potatoes, aren't you? I mean, aren't potatoes lovely? Let me be really clear about potatoes. They're not lovely. In fact, I'm going to put to you, you don't even like them. I know you don't agree with me, and that's okay. All I want to put to you is, have you ever just eaten a potato completely by itself? Just bake the potato and just eat it like that. Or, boil the potato and just eat it like that. It's not very nice. You see, the reason we like potatoes is because we smother them in things like butter and sour cream and salt. And by doing that, we make potatoes acceptable. In fact, a lot of bread is like that too, unless it's already been salted and sugared in the making of it. Even popcorn is like that. I mean, if you eat popcorn without all the artificial flavorings, the butter or the fake butter and plastic fat and all the salt or sugar now they even add, if you eat popcorn completely on its own, it just tastes like cardboard. Every now and again I've said this to somebody, they're going, I don't know, my butter tastes really good. Yeah, that's because you're cooking it in oil. Right? Even the oil is giving it a little flavor. On its own, it doesn't taste very nice. So some of the things that we're taking out this week, they really don't taste all that good to begin with. They taste good because we flavor them with a bunch of other stuff. Many times, things that aren't even all that good for us. And by the way, for those of you who suffer with the occasional severe headaches or even migraines, you may well find this week that they go away. It's possible. I'm not making any promises. What I will tell you, though, in my experience is that removing white potatoes from somebody's life removes headaches from their life as well. Why? Well, because potatoes are a brand new food as far as humans are concerned. In fact, we can name the person who introduced potatoes to us in the Western world. We can name them. His name was Sir Walter Raleigh. He also introduced us to tobacco because it's such a recent discovery. It comes from South America. They bring the potatoes over. Our digestive system has no idea what to do with it. That said, it is lots of sugar, so it's full of calories, and it will help us fight starvation, right? They can be stored for a long time, so when food is scarce, there they are, calories in a box. So they're like the grains. They can help us avoid starvation, but nutritionally, they got nothing going on for us. And worse than that, they're full of all kinds of toxins. By the way, what I mean by toxins is that the potato has evolved over many thousands of years, insecticides and chemicals designed to prevent insects and other animals from eating it because it's a seed. It wants to grow. It wants to become a plant. And so what do we have to do? We have to cook them. If we don't cook them, they make us sick. If we do cook them, they make us sick later. So I want you to know that some of these things that we're taking out, you may not want to go back to them. You may want to go back to them. These changes do not necessarily need to be permanent, but what it's going to do is give you the opportunity to feel what life is like without them so that you can now make a conscious decision. A conscious decision. In the future, you may find if you were one of the people that was dealing with headaches from time to time, you may go, wow, they stopped happening when I stopped having potatoes. What are the odds of you going back to potatoes? Lower. You may find that there are some symptoms that when you give up the grains that you no longer have them. You might find your digestion seems to be better. If you've previously been dealing with IBS or other digestional or other intestinal problems, you may find, wow, that seems to be working a little better. Then you may make a different decision about whether you go back to those foods or not. So these changes are not about permanency. They're about consciousness, awareness, and perspective. Now, I want to discuss the methodology behind these changes, and I want to address a complaint that we sometimes get from clients. Not very many, a few. And I want you to know that whenever we get feedback from clients, we take it on. We take it on and we constantly are seeking to improve. We constantly are seeking to improve everything that we do in the way we run our business. And so we take feedback from clients very seriously. And here's one of the complaints that we've occasionally received from a minority of people. I don't like the reveals. I don't like that I don't know what's happening week by week. I just want to know it all up front. I understand. I get that. I really do. And I want you to know that we've experienced with a number of different ways, and what we have found is that this program is as effective as it is precisely because we reveal one stage at a time. The challenge, if we tell people everything up front, the challenges fall into two categories. The one category is that it becomes a mountain too big to climb. It becomes a mountain too big to climb because if we say you have to do all this stuff right now, it becomes a mountain too big to climb. They look at it and go, wow, that's just too much change. Or even if we say you have to make all these changes over the next several weeks, it's like a mountain too big to climb. And so by doing the reveals incrementally, by making things soft and easy, we help our clients build self-esteem that they're sticking to the program. You are now 3 weeks in, you've stuck with the program. It hasn't been very difficult. It'll get mildly more difficult week by week, mildly more difficult, but you are building strength all the time to deal with that. The second issue is that if we tell people all of the enhancements all at the front, there are always going to be those people that are like overachievers. They're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to jump in and do all the enhancements up front. Well, then you may as well just go follow some basic diet program that gives you a bunch of rules to follow. You may follow them for a period of time that could be measured in weeks, hours, minutes, right? Because how's the average diet program work out for the world? On average, people gain 3 pounds every time they do it. So that clearly doesn't seem to be working. And so if we give people the entire the entire range of enhancements that we're making up front, then some people want to jump ahead of the program, and in so doing, they damage their long-term impact. And so if this reveal system that we're using is uncomfortable for you, I really sincerely apologize. And I'm telling you, we have heard that feedback. And through testing, we found this is the way to create the most effective result for the highest number of people. So please trust us and move on with it. And I want to tell you that what we're doing right now with the changes is we're slowly easing you into a season. One of the core principles of WildFit is that Homo sapiens evolved with natural seasons. There were seasons. And as we moved through those seasons, conditions changed. There was either more or less water, depending on the season. There was either more or less fruit, depending on the season. There was either more or less vegetable matter, depending on the season. There were either more or less root vegetables lying around, again, depending on the season. In fact, there was even either more or less animal prey around, depending on the season. And so our bodies have developed all kinds of systems and coping mechanisms for riding through those seasons. This is why, by the way, the idea of a recommended daily allowance. Now, I don't know what they call it in every country, but most countries have this thing that's basically a government-issued recommended daily allowance that says you should have this many milligrams of that, you should have this many milligrams of that, and here's your perfect nutritional intake for a day. Rubbish! Complete and utter rubbish. It makes no sense whatsoever. There was no single day in nature where every vitamin and mineral that you need to have was available on that single day. And even if it was, the sheer volume of food you would have to eat to achieve that unbelievably unlikely combination of vitamins and minerals in a single day would be impossible. What there should be is something more along the lines of a recommended annual allowance. I'll give you a perfectly good example. Vitamin B12, only available from animal products and required by Homo sapiens. Now, I know that the movie Forks Over Knives, which is inspired by the China project, or the China study, I should say. In there they say, well, yes, but animals, humans could be vegetarians because they used to get their B12 because when they pulled root vegetables up, they didn't wash them and they just ate them. And as a result of that, they got their vitamin B12. Let me be very clear what that means. What that means is they pick up the vegetables, and it's entirely true. They didn't necessarily wash them, and they ate them. And with that, they ate some of the soil. And what that soil was made up of was fertilizer, natural plant fertilizer, animal fertilizer, which came in the form of dying insects and meat and feces and urine. I mean, that's what's in the soil. So yes, there'd be vitamin B12 available that way. And of course, the predominant way of getting vitamin B12 is from animal products, just like the vitamin B12 in the soil. Here's the thing though, apparently vitamin B12 can stay in your system for somewhere between 6 and 18 months. 6 and 18 months. So what that might suggest on its own, it's not necessarily conclusive, but on its own what that might suggest is that at least as far as vitamin B12 is concerned, if you and I went hunting and we got ourselves a mammoth and we ate lots of mammoth meat that day and we got lots of vitamin B12, it's arguably true that we might not need any more vitamin B12 for 6 to 18 months after that. There's no RDA, there's no recommended daily allowance. There's a requirement for your body, probably on something more like an annual seasonal cycle. And the challenge is that most people have been living in some bizarre westernized toxic season that's a weird version of winter is coming. It's fall because there's so much sugar coming in. They're eating all these sugars, and so it's fall, and their body's going, winter's coming. And then on top of all those sugars, the vast majority of people are eating a ton of toxins and rubbish and preservatives and flavorings and colorings. And so they're slamming their body with all these toxins, and they're stimulating their body to store all this kind of fat. Guess where the toxins are going? Into the fat, right? And they're preparing for a winter that is never going to come, because they're never going to stop eating that stuff. And so what we're doing with you right now is we're moving you toward spring. We're moving you toward a season where your body understands that winter is over, that winter's over, and that your body can begin to run on a fat metabolism comfortably. And remember, your body, for those of you who are interested in weight loss, your body releases fat 2 different ways. One is that it burns it like a fuel. And the other one is it simply releases it because it doesn't need it anymore. And that's why somebody, in the weirdest twist of irony, can be eating a phenomenal amount of food and losing weight. Because the foods they're eating are indicating to the body that winter is over and that there's an abundance of food around of the right kinds. And so there's no need anymore to store fat on the body. And so the body goes, well, I am sick and tired, frankly, of carrying this fat around with me all the time. And so I'm going to simply release it. and then we release it, largely in the toilet. And so we're now moving you into a season. So I want you to understand, many of the changes we're making right now are seasonal changes. Sure, there's some adjustments you might decide to keep permanently. You may decide, you know what, I don't want dairy products anymore, and I'm never gonna go back. You may choose that, you may not. That's fine. But what we're doing right now is moving into a season. So let me remind you where we are so far. What we've done so far is we've removed refined sugars. We've done that. And now what we're doing in this week is removing all the carb sugars, all the junk sugars, the breads, the pastas, the potatoes, and all that kind of stuff. We're taking those things out. But remember what we did before all that. We added in phenomenal amounts of vegetables. Because we're eating them, because we're having our alkalizers, we added in a phenomenal amount of fruit that you're starting your day with while you have an empty stomach. You're also doing breathing exercises. Remember your breathing exercises. You're doing breathing exercises to keep yourself calm and relaxed, because again, for those of you particularly who have weight loss goals, let me tell you something. Just as important as the food you do or do not eat is your mental state of mind. You see, when somebody is allowing stress in their life, what they're indicating is there is uncertainty in the world. And if there's uncertainty, I'd better hold on to my fat, right? And so one of the reasons we're doing these breathing exercises is to relax. Let me just talk about stress again briefly. And it might not be so brief. Stress is like a filter. The animals that experience the highest levels of stress in nature are the animals with the shortest lifespan. If we use chimpanzees as the perfect example of this, if you see a troop of chimpanzees, what you will notice is that they are constantly picking and preening at each other, right? Picking and preening, taking the ticks and the stuff off them. And what's really fascinating about that is that they only preen chimpanzees that outrank them. So a beta chimpanzee will then preen an alpha chimpanzee, which means the lowest ranking chimpanzees in the troop don't get groomed. Don't get preened. And what's really fascinating about that is that when they do get preened, when they do get groomed, it produces feel-good hormones that reduce their stress levels. Don't you like it? A nice hug, a nice massage, it reduces stress levels. But the lowest ranking chimpanzees never get that treatment. And so as a result, they have stress hormones in their body and they experience the highest levels of stress. And as a consequence, they live the shortest lives. I believe that it's an evolutionary design to basically weed out the weak, to stop the weak from breeding. Now, the weird thing about that in our world is that some of the very most successful people, some of the smartest people, some of the people with the best physiologies that should absolutely be passing on their genetic code are under tremendous amounts of stress because we now do stress differently than they did in nature. We do stress where a visa bill can arrive and we go, oh, stress! Right? Or I got fired from my job, stress. Or worse than that, I think I might get fired from my job for months, and we sit with that stress the whole time. And what we do when we do that is we make ourselves the lowest ranking member of the troop, and we start communicating a signal to our DNA that we want to get voted off the island. And so part of the reason behind doing these breathing exercises is to create some calm in your life. And every time you do that, what you're doing is demonstrating to your body that you are successful. Every moment that you are calm and relaxed is a moment that your body goes, I am successful. And so your body experiences less stress. And for those of you who want to lose weight, your body will find it a lot easier to release that weight. So please make sure that you're doing your breathing exercises. And remember, your 6 to 8 glasses of water a day. So that's what we're doing so far. I want you to do that this week. And I want you to remember, many of these changes may not be permanent. We're moving into a season. So be playful, experiment, and allow this to happen. Pay attention to your dialogue. If the sugar monster riles up and says, come on, just a piece of bread, we won't even put anything on it, just a piece of bread. No, because if we deny the monster this one time, remember, we never know when the last craving will be. We never know when the last impulse will be. But what we do know is that over time, they'll get weaker and weaker and weaker, and they will give us increased control and consciousness over every food decision we make. So have a fantastic week, and I will see you on Friday.